Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Soulless Minions of Orthodoxy Alternative DVD Commentaries. My name is Justin, and sitting next to me is...
Josh, hello.
Hello, Josh. And today we're going to be looking at the 1985 film Explorers. Now, before we get going with the commentary, there are some people out there who, instead of just listening to our commentary, actually want to watch it with the feature film playing. So in order to do that, we need to set up a sync point. Now, our sync point as it is now is set up right after the Paramount logo fades to black. And on my DVD player, that is exactly 13 seconds into the film. So you're going to want to set your DVD player at that point and hit pause. And then in a few seconds, we're going to do this for real. But for right now, this is just a test. I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, unpause. So again, that was just a test, and here it goes for real. So have your DVD synced up right after Paramount logo goes to black, 13 seconds, and here we go. This is for the money. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, unpause. Paramount Pictures presents.
An Edward S. Feldman production. All right, Justin. Why have we decided to do Explorers today?
Well, The Explorers is a movie that we both grew up with. I mean, I've lost count of how many times we've watched this movie. It's just one of those kind of seminal coming-of-age, growing-up movies, The Explorers, that just as a kid, I don't know if it was heavy rotation on HBO. Must have been, because we certainly didn't have the DVD back then. Just that we watched constantly. And speaking for myself, it just spoke to me. I mean, we're both sci-fi, geeks. So this movie certainly spoke to us in that sense. And it just seemed like the perfect movie to do. What do you think?
Well, you're definitely right about us catching it a lot on HBO or Cinemax or whichever movie channel. Because we definitely did not see it in the movie theater, as most people didn't. But it is a seminal film. I agree with you on that.
Well, in 1985, I would have been 8 years old. So,
yeah, I was around 4. So,
yeah, so it was definitely a little later on its cable run that we caught it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had been doing some preparation.
Look at that effect. I'm sorry to cut you off, but look at that effect real quick. I mean, that's good.
Of him flying in the clouds?
Yeah. I mean,
sure.
That's a good step up from, 1978 or so when Superman was done. I think those are good effects, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, like I was saying, in preparation for this show, I was doing a little, research, see if I can dig up some facts about the movie. And I actually found out that there was a novelization of the screenplay. It wasn't, the book wasn't written first. It was a novelization of the actual screenplay, produced probably before the movie was actually finished filming, before it was released.
Sure.
It was adapted by George Gipe. It was adapted from the screenplay written by Eric Luke. I looked up Eric Luke, and there wasn't that many credits that I recognized. The only two things that I did recognize was a TV movie, I think was made for Disney, called Not Quite Human and Still Not Quite Human.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
I remember that.
With Alan Thicke.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I remember those. Those are the only two other credits that I recognized. But anyway.
Okay.
So I found the book online. I went to the Amazon Marketplace and I got it for cheap. Read it in a couple of nights. It's not a very dense book. It's a couple hundred pages. And I wanted to see how similar it was to the actual film, because Joe Dante mentions that there was a lot left out of the actual film, that he wasn't able to complete it on time, or just complete it because it was just rushed to the theaters, and the studio wanted to put it out as is, and he wasn't able to complete it. So there was probably some stuff that he wasn't able to film, or they weren't able to flesh it out completely. So got the book, read it, and there are some differences, but there's a lot
written by Eric Luke.
Written by Eric Luke. There are some similarities, but differences. For instance, in the beginning here, it starts off with the dream sequence, and you only see Ethan Hawke's dream. In the novelization, you see Wolfgang's dream, his dream, and Ben's dream, Wolfgang's dream, and Darren's dream.
Well, that's interesting because at this point in the film, the two characters of Darren and Wolfgang haven't had the dream yet at all.
Well, no, that's not what I meant. Wolfgang is talking here about his dream. He's mentioning it to Ben. He's saying, I had this dream I was in school with no clothes on. But
you mean that dream?
Yeah,
okay.
Right. In the novelization, that's expanded upon, and you're actually into his dream where he's walking around in school and he's slowly losing his clothes, right?
Okay.
And you're introduced to Darren in the next chapter with his dream. His dream is taking place in his house, and he's in his living room, and he's building a motorbike or something or other. And his father and his stepmother, Mona, are arguing, and at first he thinks it's his mother, and then he realizes, oh, his mother's dead. And since it's a dream, he's allowed to be a little forgetful in that sense. So we're told right off the bat that he's mechanically inclined. He has, a father who, yells a lot, and his mother's dead. So he gets a proper introduction in the book as opposed to the film. But
right.
Speaking about the film, going back to it, we cut from that scene immediately to this one. And on the DVD...
To the fight scene?
Yeah, on the DVD, there's 2 cut scenes that were always included on the TV version and in the theatrical version, but were deleted from the DVD for some odd reason.
Is that right?
Yeah, because it's supposed to be, after that, you're supposed to see Ben and Wolfgang walking to school.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, you're supposed to see them walking to school together. And Ben is talking about the dream he had, and he gives him the diagram that he drew.
Yeah, I remember all of that.
Right.
I can't believe I forgot that when rewatching this.
Right, and then the Steve Jackson gang comes up and rips his pants, and then Wolfgang goes home and says, I'm gonna pretend to be sick.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, wow. I wonder why they cut that out.
And we're introduced to Laurie Swenson, too. He sees her, I think, in that scene, before he sees her right there in the fight scene. But
how strange.
Yeah. Speaking of the diagram, it'll come back later. But if you remember in the opening sequence, when Ben is having that dream, he wakes up. He tries to remember what it is that he had dreamed, the diagram. But he slowly starts to forget. His dreams fade.
Yeah.
That's going to come back later because the diagram was incomplete, and Wolfgang tried to fill in the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to come into play later. It's addressed in the novel, not in the movie, but it does explain a few things that the movie leaves out, and I'll talk about that when we get there. But that's in the third act. So,
okay. I find it very unlikely that good old Ben here could have kept up with Darren riding that bike.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see that happening.
I looked up the actor who plays Darren here, Jason Presson. He hasn't done a whole lot. He had some mostly TV credits around this time in the early 80s to late 80s. A couple of film credits, but not much. He kind of disappeared, and then he had a couple of other credits in like 2010 and 2009. So
really,
for about looks like 20 years he hadn't done any acting, and then suddenly he came back in some very small roles. So I don't know what the scoop is there, but
that's very interesting. I'll have to look those up. That's not uncommon, of course, for child actors to just kind of fall off the radar and go back to their quote unquote civilian life.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he hasn't been doing anything. He just wasn't acting. So. Oh
well, yeah. I'm sure he wasn't just sitting at home drinking beer, but it's. I would think it's very unusual. to have an Ethan Hawke where he's a successful child actor who then goes on to a very successful adult film career. That's quite rare.
Here we have the creek. This is given a little bit more of a description in the novel. It's bigger. It's a bigger. It's a bigger part of the. Yeah, it's a bigger set piece of the actual story. They go in and out of it a lot, and it actually.
I really like that lighting coming through the trees.
Coming through the trees, yeah.
That's nice. Now this.
I'm sorry. Before I forget, because I'm going to forget. You mentioned Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
I told you about this earlier before we recorded this, that I saw an interview with Joe Dante at the New Beverly Theater. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, just type in Joe Dante New Beverly and on YouTube, and it'll probably come up. And he talks pretty candidly about what it was like to make this movie and what happened with it. And I wish it was longer. It's only about 15 minutes, but he mentions Ethan Hawke and how when Ethan Hawke was cast, he wasn't even supposed to be auditioning for the role of Ben. He came in with a friend, and his friend was auditioning, and Joe Dante just liked Ethan Hawke, his look, so much that he decided to give him a shot and did a screen test, and then bang, bang, boom, he got the job.
That's an awesome success story.
So yeah, he hadn't even gone in there with the intent of being an actor, and I guess he was just a natural. So,
well, he certainly seems to have proven that assumption correct.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot of writing and directing though as of late.
Yeah, that's awesome. He's a multi-talented guy.
Well, yeah, which is excellent because I've read his books and watched the movies he's directed, and they're very good. So,
I never liked the disarray of Wolfgang's house. All those kids, everything's dirty and disgusting.
Yeah, the book is.
It seems in great contrast to the fact that the two scientists, in the family, the kid and the dad and all that.
The cat here is Earhart, and the mouse is Heinlein, which I'm pretty sure is a reference to Robert Heinlein.
Oh, I'm sure.
Now, the character of Darren kind of takes a sidestep to Ben and Wolfgang in the movie. He's not given as much development, but in the novel, he's given a little bit more light, and that was better to have than this kind of more two-dimensional character. And when he's going into this to this scene, he doesn't really want to go to Wolfgang's as he does here, but it's given a bit more description, and also how this kind of scene plays out is also a little bit different. But actually, the book doesn't. There wasn't as much character development in the book as I'd hoped. All three of the characters don't really change that much. Darren, a little bit. There's no real resolution with his father or any kind of scene with his father, which I assumed would be in there, but it wasn't. Ben pretty much stays the same, and so does Wolfgang. They don't really change that much. They just kind of go through this experience together, and I didn't really feel that they were kind of enlightened in any way, so that was a bit disappointing. But overall, the book,
they can't all have that experience.
No,
it seems more fitting, certainly, that the character of Darren would be changed in some way, whereas the other two are a little more open-minded to start with. So,
yeah, I suppose. Another thing about the novel, Ben here. There was a subplot which was actually kind of nice that they completely dropped. There was a subplot with his brother, his older brother Bill, who was, probably like a junior or senior in high school.
Mhm.
And there's an opening scene before he meets Wolfgang on the way to school where he's asking his brother for a ride, and his brother's kind of giving him the brush off because his older brother is more interested in football and girls and whatever. He doesn't want to hang around with his little brother anymore.
Right.
And there's another scene, a dinner table scene with the whole family, and it's kind of the same thing. It's Ben's not getting any attention, the older brother is, and the older brother's being very dismissive of him. And it was kind of a nice dynamic set up between a young boy and a young man, how thoughts of a young man are much different than that of a boy, and the wonderment that Ben has is his older brother didn't have anymore. So that was a nice juxtaposition that they had. I wish they would have exploited it a little bit more. And there is only one reference to his brother in dialogue in the movie, where they're walking up to the top of the hill looking over the town, and Ben says, "Oh, I used to come here with my brother all the time." That was before he went into his jerk phase.
Yeah,
So,
sure, I remember that.
Yeah, but in the novelization, as I said, it was based on the screenplay, so I can assume that they maybe had shot it or were going to shoot it. There was much more interplay with him and the brother, and the character that you see at the drive-in, that's with the girl in the car, and he mentions how fake the special effects are.
Yeah.
That is supposed to be his brother. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, we have James Cromwell.
Sure. Pre-first contact, pre-babe.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Terrific character actor. I like the interplay between Darren and Wolfgang. All three of them don't necessarily get along in the same way. They, you take two of them and put them together, and they have a completely different, dynamic than another two put together.
Yeah.
I like that. Just adds a little more flavor to it.
Yeah. Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, yeah. What
no,
did I say about
yeah,
this?
he says, "Look, check it out. Baywatch is on." That's the line, because I've seen that MST3K movie so many times.
Many a times, yes.
Yeah. In the
Exeter, you're a liar.
You're a liar, and I hate you. Huntsville, Alabama. Back there, you saw the poster on his wall referring to Space Camp. That's another subplot that was cut out. Ben has an obsession with going to Space Camp, and there's a scene that takes place before this one where he's climbing onto his roof, where he's talking to his mother and father. And he had given his father a brochure of Space Camp, and he's asking if he looked over it, and his father is kind of sadly says, "No, I forgot. I've been busy at work." And Ben is obsessed about going to Space Camp. Just in kind of deepening his wonderment of space in the overall plot. So in the beginning, he's very obsessed about going, and really doesn't want to give up on it. And then as soon as, of course, he starts getting into the experiments with Wolfgang and Darren, he kind of starts to forget about it. But it's very much at the forefront in the beginning.
That's interesting.
There's some other references to it, like to Space Camp. I mean, he puts the space shuttle model on the front of the Thunder Road, and he has that NASA sticker inside.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no verbal references to it or any other scenes regarding it.
Right. I get a kick out of Wolfgang's computer setup here. It's so ancient. It's almost comical now.
Yeah, he says his computer has 128K of memory, which is
I know.
Yeah, which is about the size of like a Word document. I would think.
Yeah. It's a vector graphic.
You mean a drawing? Yeah.
But in computer terms, we call it a vector graphic.
Right. I think this was River Phoenix's first movie as well, wasn't it?
I don't know about that.
I think it was. If not, it was definitely one of his first. Maybe he'd done some TV acting or something.
Right.
Yeah, in the novelization, there's some little bit more going on in this scene as well. The sphere is never invisible at first, and
You mean they could see it right away?
right away it's never invisible. And
Mm.
when he shows it to Ben, Ben decides to do a little test, and he takes out Heinlein, the mouse, puts it on a broom handle, and he says, "Okay, Wolfgang, turn off the sphere." And then he places it where the sphere roughly was. He says, "Okay, now turn it back on." So he turns it on, and it encloses Heinlein in the sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And he lets the mouse stay in there for a few seconds, but then Wolfgang starts to freak out and says, "Oh, I don't like this." He thinks he's gonna kill his mouse, so he turns it off. Well, yeah, but that's just a scene that didn't make it into the final cut.
Mm. That probably would have been a little, tricky in 1985 for, it probably just would have looked very cheesy, with the effects, that is, to do that.
Here we have Earhart stepping on the keyboard and sending the sphere into a frets. This is also a little different, and it also there is an explanation that's not in the movie as to why Darren right here suddenly shows up.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that.
In the novelization, there's a scene when Darren is in his dad's shed, and the shed's only shown once near the end of the movie. Do you remember? It's before they go off on their journey. They're in a work shed, and this is after they all had their combined dream, and then there's an explosion in the shed, and oxygen starts to leak out into the air. You don't remember? You don't remember?
Oh, I remember.
This?
I remember that scene. Yeah.
Well, that's his dad's work shed. That's Darren's dad's work shed. And after Darren had left, after the first scene they had together in here, Darren was very not very trusting of what had happened. He figured that Ben and Wolfgang were pulling some kind of trick on him with all the holes in the books and in the wall and everything. So he was like, how could they possibly do that? That doesn't make any sense. But it had to be a trick. It couldn't possibly, be real. So he goes into his work shed, his dad's work shed, and he gets like pliers and a vice grip or whatever, and he tries to like smash holes in books to see if he can actually do it with his hands. And
to create like these perfect holes.
these perfect holes, and he does punch through parts of it, but it's all scraggly and it doesn't look right.
Sure.
It's like,
no,
okay, he's like, oh man, this is just, how do they do that? This doesn't make any sense. And he decides to go for a walk, and as he's walking through the neighborhood, he sees what he thinks is a burglar, but it is actually Ben jumping over the fence into Wolfgang's backyard. So he decides to follow the shadowy figure and over the fence. And as he does that, that's when he sees it's Ben, and then he knocks on the window. So that's why he suddenly just shows up.
Are we not supposed to question how on earth this monitor and computer is powered at this moment?
Well, yeah, he says he has a battery in there. It's like a 9-volt battery.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure he explains that battery is somehow powering the sphere itself, not the computer. I believe, or at least that's what I thought was implied by that statement.
Yeah, that's what I assumed as well. The novelization doesn't explain too much on that either, but
it's neither here nor there.
It's not that important, I suppose. I wish our city had a outlook on the town like that. That'd be nice.
Well, we have an outlook, but it just doesn't look like that.
No.
That's pretty good effects.
Yeah, for 1985, this was pretty good.
Yeah. And given that this film was, generally directed for 10, 12-year-old boys in 1985, who, of course, had a completely different understanding of scientific processes than, they do now, I really enjoyed the fact that they took the time to go into that there's no inertia within the bubble, that there's no oxygen in there, and it provides a reason for them to be able to go this fast and not be somehow damaged, and to have the fact that there's no oxygen in there gives them an obstacle to overcome, and they have to use their brains and come up with a way to survive inside that thing. I just think it would have been very easy to just have them be in the bubble and it is what it is, and not have any sort of scientific reasoning behind why they could breathe or couldn't breathe, that sort of thing. It just could have been ignored. But I enjoyed that thought was put into it.
Yeah, you're probably right. It could have not been touched upon, and watching it, you probably never would have really thought about it, to be honest. I mean, you're
not
right
as a
about
kid.
that.
It's
No.
something you would have looked at later.
But there is something about the oxygen that does come up in regard to the story that is not really explained, which is, I guess, right here too. There's two parts to that story.
Okay.
Right here, Ben's saying, "Oh, I've got a great idea." He wants to go spy on Laurie Swenson, and you're wondering why. Okay, they just found out that it's airtight, and all of a sudden Ben is in the bubble.
Right.
He's in the sphere, and he's not showing any signs of being suffocated.
Right.
That's because before this scene, all three of them experiment and put Ben in the sphere before going to her house and see how long they can stay in there before they start to get lightheaded and pass out.
Okay.
And it turns out to be 5 minutes or something like that. So they do explain why they just suddenly don't seem to care that there's no air in there.
Okay.
Yeah, the novelization does explain a little bit more to how the sphere, forms. Because as you know, like when it turns on, and when they first get in the Thunder Road, it snaps the wooden legs off the
Sure.
Thunder. Yeah. They visually show that in the movie, but in the book, it's a little bit more explained. So they know that it will, chop anything off that it's
that's in its path.
Exactly. So when they're testing out prior to this scene, Ben stands on like a mound of dirt, and they turn it on so it doesn't cut his feet off, so it'll grab underneath him.
So in the book, he's actually sitting like on a little mound of dirt inside the sphere.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, but again, that's one of those little things that they took the time to show, at least in the film, that is true to the physics, of this movie. That sphere is, virtually impenetrable and whatnot. And when it appears, it, like you said, it cuts the legs off of the Thunder Road, and it's just one of those things could have been glossed over. No one probably would have thought otherwise, except 20 years down the line when rewatching it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was very young, I never thought about it either. Not till I became a young adult did I not. When I thought about it, wouldn't it kind of chop there? Because when it appears over Wolfgang, he just suddenly springs up and he's inside of it. There's no real explanation as to why it didn't chop his feet off.
Yeah, just luck, I guess. Could have. I don't know, just luck.
Well, yeah, I mean that's something that in the novelization that Ben does bring up when he accidentally creates the sphere over Wolfgang. He's like, oh, thank God I didn't chop his feet off.
Okay.
Because he almost thought he did for a few moments.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. In regard to the Thunder Road here, I think it's a tilt-a-whirl. That's what What's what they call it. They do find it in the junkyard just as they do here, but there's a bit more thought going into it before they actually find the tilt-a-whirl. when it comes to the actual conceptual design of the craft. They know they want to build something for them to sit in, and Darren being the kind of the builder, of the three. He's the one who's good with tools, and
sure, he's the grunt, he's the muscle.
Right. So he's like, I'll try to design something for us to do this with, and then they Wolfgang, who's more the scientist, he's like, oh, we should be aerodynamic, and they want to make it like egg shaped or something like that. And they actually find a lot of what is supposed to go inside the Thunder Road inside Wolfgang's garage, like the chairs and building material. The actual shell is the only thing that they find. Well, it's said to have actually been found here. So, it's a little Star Wars reference there.
Oh, sure. And of course, that mask pops up later.
Yeah. Well, there is something we haven't talked about yet. That this movie is often talked about when brought up is the third act of the film.
Well, why don't we save that?
You want to save that till we get there? Okay.
Till we get there, yeah.
Okay.
What a great idea of using that piece of equipment, to be the basis of their ship. I mean, how cool is that? That's something about this movie that I think has made it endure. And, granted, I'm saying that as someone who grew up watching it, but I think if you were to put this movie in front of someone from our generation now, who never saw it growing up, I think they would be equally touched by it as we were and still are. And I think part of that reason is that it genuinely taps into that thing that makes 12-year-old boys, and that allows a boy of that age to walk into a junkyard, see that tilt-a-whirl, and say, that's our spaceship. That's something that is inherent to being a boy. And that's something I think this movie really captured very well. And even though some of that magic inside yourself may be lost as you grow up, when you go back and rewatch a movie like this that gets it right, it just speaks to you. I mean, for me, that's one of the reasons why this movie is so rewatchable, because it taps into that thing that, kind of at this point in my life anyway, lays a little dormant. So,
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, even the idea, the concept of them, finding the tilt-a-whirl in, junkyard. I mean, it's just very believable. Like, oh, they really could find something like that. And
yeah, it's not like they built it from scratch.
Yeah. It's like, oh, an empty, an old thrown out, ride like that. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
And
well, sure. How many times have you sat in something that had no connection to being a spaceship of any sort, and imagined that was your ship or your airplane or whatever, and that's exactly what they're doing here.
Mm-hmm. Well, here we have the building montage, and we haven't talked about the score yet by Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah,
great piece.
Excellent score.
Excellent score. Great piece of music. This is one of my favorite tracks from the score.
Mm-hmm.
Great stuff.
Would you agree? I'm not sure. Would you say that this is kind of a half and half mix of orchestral and synthetic, electric score?
I see what you mean. I'm not really sure, honestly.
I mean, Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah. No, I like this. He sticks his eye in there after it pulls out. Like, that's not a really good idea.
Jerry Goldsmith.
This battery here is not. It's not explained where it comes from. Obviously, he got it from a truck or a car, but Darren actually took it from his dad's work truck.
Okay,
so that's where that comes from. Why he has access to something like that right away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this whole scene plays out much better in the movie. In the novelization, and I assume the original screenplay, it was a little more drawn out than it needed to be. And reading the book, all I
What,
heard.
that the late nights are taking a toll on them?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a montage here. So
Sure.
in the novelization, um, it was just when there was more detail, it went on a little bit longer, and it kind of dragged. I think it kind of slowed the story down.
Hmm.
And watching it as a montage with this great music, of course, it goes by really quick. So it's just has an energy that the book didn't have. And when it comes right there, we see the schematic of the Thunder Road. The book didn't really explain what the Thunder Road really looked like.
Hmm.
Not really. I thought it would. Like, they had the design. Like the screenwriter must have had that design in his head, like with the trash can and the space shuttle in the front. But not really. He just kind of explained the tilt-a-whirl part and the fact that they had like these porthole windows
Hmm.
attached to it, but not really too much else to the design. And I mean, they did mention like Ben painted the lightning bolt symbols. And I'm sorry, right there, that was Eric Luke, the screenwriter, his teacher.
Oh, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, that's IMDb trivia, I think, right there. Drinking
That
beer.
is that beer or is that root beer?
It's beer.
Huh.
Yeah, surprising that they did that, considering it was
Yeah.
1985 and they were all supposed to be about 13 years old or so.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it is beer, of course.
Yeah, Darren says, "Oh, it's good beer. My father drinks a lot of it."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit more interplay in the screenplay or the novel. Sorry, I don't know what to call it. In regard to the name of the Thunder Road,
Hmm.
they go back and forth for a little bit longer about what to call it, and then Darren just kind of throws out of his ass. He says, "Oh, how about Thunder Road?" And he didn't
Hmm.
really expect them to go for it, but they were both so taken by it that that made Darren like feel suddenly very like intelligent and creative. And it's called The Thunder Road. In the novelization, it's just Thunder Road.
Oh.
So I thought that was a little weird. And in that interview with Joe Dante,
Hmm.
he mentioned actually that Wolfgang Peterson was involved with this movie at one time, and you actually
I had thought
you
that
had
he
thought
directed it
you
at
had
one
thought that
point.
he did
Yeah.
direct it at one point. So maybe that's where you got confused because
Maybe, I don't know. There's something about this movie that has kind of a
yeah, because
touch of his.
it's kind of like similar to like say the Neverending Story maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he had just done that.
Maybe.
Because
Yeah.
that was like
I don't know.
that was
Somehow
like a year
I got
before
confused.
this. Yeah, that was like a year before this. So Joe Dante mentions in his interview at the New Beverly that it's kind of just an anecdote. When they were filming this, they had the three boys in here inside the Thunder Road, and they were like up in front of a green screen or blue screen or whatever. And in between takes, they would just have their microphones on, and at first, they wouldn't. They know they were being listened to or whatever, and they would mind what they were saying. But after a while, they just kind of forgot, and that that people in the crew could hear them. And Joe Dante recollected that they were just talking like 12, 13-year-old boys would talk about, usually about girls and about sex and whatever, and it just made him feel it kind of took him back to his own childhood and adolescence, and it was kind of like a time warp for him, and he looked back on it very warmly.
Whenever I see this shot, I can't take my eyes off of that mask on the side of Darren's head.
What
He had the oxygen mask, just kind of sitting onto the side of his head there, and for some reason, that's always just a visual draw to me.
Yeah, that happens to people sometimes. They just key on to one
It's
aspect.
just one of those things, yeah.
Yeah.
What a great looking ship. God, I just love it.
Yeah, and who would have thought to put a trash can at the front like that? It's just kind of...
I know, but it fits. It's
It-
just right.
It does fit, yeah, but it's a great ship. It's iconic of the movie. I mean,
It is. It is.
See,
There go the legs.
there go the
Yeah.
legs, yeah. visually touched upon, but never really talked about in the movie. But it's not that important.
No. And, they actually, again, visually show it, but don't talk. Well, they kind of talk about it a little. That when they go to sit down, they're actually being suspended in the air. So no matter how close they get that bubble to the ground, when they turn it off, they're going to drop,
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, granted, in the particular scene I'm talking about, I think it's in the end of the scene when they get back and he shuts it off and they're actually like 5 feet in the air. But in reality, of course, even if he had set it down closer, they still would drop.
Well, yeah, I mean, something was in the novelization, but not here in the actual scene, is Wolfgang had programmed a command into the computer where all he had to do is press one key to return them to their starting point, their point of origin.
Yeah.
And he does press it, and it takes him back, but they don't crash to the ground. But the reason why they crash to the ground is because they were on legs before, I assume. So that's why they do this time. But
right.
Actually, in this scene, there's a little bit more going on. They're actually disturbing all the dogs. And a lot of dogs, actually, and they all come out and start barking, and that actually wakes up most of the neighborhood, and somebody comes out with a shotgun before they actually figure out how to move faster. Because Wolfgang is being very scientific, and he's like, I don't want to
push it too far.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to push it too far, but both Ben and Darren are like, oh, come on, let's open her up, see what she's got. And,
Well, yeah, sure, look, they're just hovering over there.
Yeah.
Given the, realistic nature that, I kind of talked about, that they stick to their own science, as far as how the sphere works and all of that. Given that they do that, and, Wolfgang's reaction to suffocating in it a little bit, it would have been just a little bit nice if at the start of the scene, they were a little more scared about the fact that they are, hundreds of feet in the air going so fast and all that. And, one thing goes wrong and they could die. Even if it was just a little bit of lip service, it would have been.
Yeah, there is lip service in the novelization to that. Yeah, there is. Robert Picardo, a
sure,
Joe Dante regular. He shows up in Inner Space and in Gremlins. Or is it Gremlins 2? See right there, this is supposed to be
Gremlins 2. Yeah, this is the brother.
It's supposed to be the older brother.
And of course, he is the alien.
Oh yeah, that's true. He's Whack
at the end of the movie.
The character's name is Whack.
I didn't know that either.
But that scene.
Yeah. This whole thing on the screen. This is of course completely made up.
Yeah.
Some people. As a kid, I didn't even think that because of course I didn't know who Robert Picardo was, and given that they showed the.
I think it was a nice touch to have it be. It's an Italian movie, but it's dubbed really bad in English. Yeah. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah. And that they're kind of sticking to this classic sci-fi thing. Of course, they already showed this Island Earth.
Yeah.
And, to now show this kind of fake version of it, it's a nice little touch.
I like that line. He was like my father. Do you know what I mean? She says, he was my father. I thought that was a good line. Star Killer. His name is Star Killer. Reference to Star Wars, perhaps.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, originally Luke was Luke Starkiller.
That's right. And that, kind of that was kind of funny. In the scene here with the brother,
this looks so fake.
Yeah, with the brother with Bill and his girlfriend, there is actually a little different. In the movie here, he's coming on to her, and she's kind of like not really into it. But in the novelization, she's actually a little bit more aggressive than he is, and so there's a bit more of an exchange of innuendo and coming on and whatnot. So that I kind of like that a little bit better than what they played out here.
Right.
That always kind of reminds me.
Didn't you say something before about how the characters on the screen are sort of reacting to, or at least appear to be reacting?
That reminds me of Silver Streak. Sorry. I like that right there where he picks up the prop when it fell over.
Right.
I really I thought that was a good joke. It always makes me laugh. I'm sorry. About how the characters in the movie are reacting to the events in the diner. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I heard somewhere from another podcast or something or other like that. They were talking about that, and they thought that joke really didn't fly, or it kind of confused them, or something in that regard. But I never thought that. I mean, obviously, it's kind of like breaking the fourth wall, kind of a deal.
Yeah, I never found it confusing. I got it.
It was never confusing. Like, I got it. Like, yeah, it's an in-movie joke. Like,
yeah, it's just a gag.
Yeah, it's just a gag, and I never took it like, why can't he hear them? I'm like, well, it's a movie, it's a joke. That's all.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I found it confusing that they were having problems.
Confused.
That they were.
Yeah.
I mean, they understood that it was breaking the fourth wall, but they just kind of had problems with it.
They took issue with it. You know?
Here we have Dick Miller, another.
We'd order it down. Yeah.
I swallowed my gum. Another regular of Dante. He shows up in The Burbs and also in Gremlins.
Yep.
Probably in Small Soldiers as well, I think, which I've only seen a couple of times. The character Dick Miller plays, Charlie, actually had a little bit of a bigger part. Joe Dante mentioned that he was supposed to come back in the end in a fantasy sequence, and in the novelization, he does in fact come back in a fantasy sequence. But his character's a little, I wouldn't say fleshed out, but he has more scenes in the novelization. They show him like in talking to other police officers, and he's just kind of painted as an obsessive, compulsive guy, because he's known for, you know, always being on the track of somebody or something like that. Right. A little bit different than what he's painted here.
Well, here, you know, they give him that line that he'd been having that dream since he was a kid, and
which is not in the book.
Well, you know, forgetting the book just for a second, I mean, it's in the movie, so
there's something
he gives that
there's
line.
Something similar to it in the book, but that it doesn't have that line, and I thought that line was very important to have.
I think that line is important, but it's also a little confusing given that these boys are having a dream that's specifically being sent to them by the aliens. So when Dick Miller's character says that, you know, when you start to analyze it, you're thinking, well, what dream? You know, is he referring to some sort of, you know, alien-induced dream, or just a dream of contact? Mm-hmm. You know, but no matter what your rationale is, it's clear that he's kind of a version of Ben, you know, grown up.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's what I always thought. Like, he was just...
this is terrifying what's happening to these guys right now.
Yeah, I know.
I'd be peeing all over myself. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and, you know, I always thought that, oh, you know, the Thunder Road would just completely disintegrate without...
It would.
But in the book, you know, you believe that it wouldn't, because the way they put it together and how it is addressed, that, you know, how good Darren is at building things.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess if they gave some sort of... I mean, you see Darren welding, so maybe it is... I mean, there's not too many parts to it, so if he did weld it, really, it probably would stay together.
Yeah, and this bit here about them going in reverse, he said he tricked the computer. That's not in the book. But about Dick Miller's character. Yeah, I mean, I always kind of felt that he had that boyhood wonderment that was kind of like Ethan Hawke, but he'd grown up. He couldn't make that connection that they had. And that's what the movie kind of makes you think, but it's not really expanded upon. He's brought in kind of in the second act, and he exits kind of before the third act begins. And there's no real other scenes with his character. There's nothing else to his character other than to drive them into space a little bit quicker.
Yeah, it's really a shame, because of any element in the movie that I would have liked to have heard or, you know, read explored more in the book, it would have been that character, because he he had clear thematic ties to Ben.
Yeah, I thought it's a nice touch, kind of like I was mentioning with his older brother Bill, and how
Yeah,
he
same thing.
he had lost that
Wonderment.
that Ethan Hawke has, that Ben has. And that's something that his parents talk about too, when he's begging them to go to space camp, and he says, "Oh, I'll do extra chores, I'll whatever, and I'll pay for half of it." And they both are like, "Well, maybe he'll go this year, and next year he'll forget about it or something, because right now it seems really important to him, but next year, he'll be on to other things." And it's kind of addressed that he's on the verge of adolescence, and he's going to start to forget these things. And that's kind of not so much in the forefront, but it is addressed, and it's kind of a nice touch, but it's not touched upon enough. I don't think, which I was a little disappointed by, but overall, it was an enjoyable read. I'd recommend somebody pick it up if they do like this movie. It was a joy to read. It was a joy to even know that a novelization existed. So,
right.
It's not really long. You can read it really, really quick. But it was definitely fun. So, pick it up.
And isn't that Meshach Taylor with him?
His co-pilot?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the actor's name.
From Designing Women, and then he was also the flamboyant gay guy in Mannequin.
Is that the same guy in Mannequin?
That's the same guy.
Yeah, Hollywood. Come and get me, Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was back when they were allowed to have flamboyantly gay characters like that.
Yeah, it's still funny.
Yeah, and this here, the
UFO scare.
Yeah, the UFO scares in the newspaper. That's the only time it's ever publicly addressed in the movie. In the novelization, it's brought much more to light. Like there's right there, I think you see his dad reading about it. Like in this scene, they're supposed to be talking about it, and Wolfgang is getting a little uncomfortable because it's on the news. It's not on the newspaper. It's on the actual TV screen, and the news reporters talking about it. So it's kind of a buzz in the town, and it comes back later. I'll tell you when it's supposed to come back later. But
it's kind of like War Games.
Yeah, there's a bit more questions being asked about what happened the night before.
Right.
And I'll mention here before I forget, like you see that there's Wolfgang has a lot of siblings. There was a character cut out by the name of Ludwig, which is supposed to be Wolfgang's little brother, and he pops in a couple of times. Ludwig is actually on to what Wolfgang and Ben and Darren are doing with the building the Thunder Road. He's getting really suspicious, and eventually Ludwig does show up at the Thunder Road, and they kind of have to scare him away or whatever. And so there's a character.
Oh, there's a
character. Yeah, there's the Thunder Road.
Yeah, see,
it looks like he's trying to build something.
He's a grown up Ben. I mean, that's really what it is, and it's 15 minutes more of screen time added to the movie would have really been a payoff for this.
Yeah, like you see, he has electronic gear out, so it looks like maybe he had a dream.
And there's a sci-fi movie. It looks like playing in the background. I mean, this is something he's very much into.
Yeah, see, this was a nice touch. I liked it, which wasn't in the original screenplay. He was just kind of he wasn't a mean guy. He was just obsessed about finding them.
Right. No, I never even growing up got the impression that he was a mean guy. It seemed like he just really wished he could have been included,
Mm-hmm.
Never ever once perceived him as a, bad character. He's a foil that they have to work around.
I think this is part of the movie where they have their combined dream, I think. Is this where it happens, or is that a little bit later?
No, this would have to be it, given the time of the movie where we're at here.
This is in the book. He does see her floating in a window.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. This is where they have their combined dream.
Yeah, this is where they all start talking.
This
This kind of reminds me of Tron.
Tron, sure. There is a large scene I'll bring up now that was cut out before this is supposed to take place. After their first trip, and they all and Ben is the only one excited. He still wants to go, and Darren and Wolfgang are very trepidatious. They don't want to go because they almost died. They actually go to a party at Laurie Swenson's house because Laurie had invited Ben to her birthday party. So they go to this birthday party, and the three of them kind of separate. Wolfgang and Darren actually go off and have a scene together, and Ben actually goes and talks to Laurie, and said he beforehand he says, "Oh, I'm gonna go tell her how I feel." And, Wolfgang's like, okay, that's not a good idea. Don't do it. And he's like, I got to do it. And so he goes and he actually gives her a ring with has a Mars rock on it, like a little Mars rock, like a little,
Okay.
where a diamond would be, like a little diamond. It's actually a Mars rock. It's just like, oh, that's nice. And then he goes to kiss her, and she's like, okay, here's
so this is the shed.
This is the shed, right?
I never really thought about it.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a shed. Because they don't explain what this place is in the movie.
No, it makes sense. I mean, if I actually thought about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never actually gave it any thought.
This is Darren's father's shed. And let me finish this story quickly before I tell you what this scene is about. But he tries to kiss Laurie. She lets him kiss her, and then she says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just don't feel that way about you." And her character's painted it a little differently. You're inherently likable. She dismisses Ben really quickly,
Right.
and he's kind of shot down. And she tells her friends, "I don't really like him. He's not that cute," and blah blah blah. And
Okay.
and there's a buzz in the party because, as I said, the whole town is wondering what happened because the UFO thing, and so all the kids at the party are watching TV, and they want to find out more about the UFO. And Laurie's getting a little upset that nobody's paying attention to her. And there's another brief little moment in the party where Wolfgang and Darren are together, and Wolfgang convinces Darren to go hit on a girl, and it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out, and Darren gets slapped in the face. And it's kind of humorous. But that scene right there where the shed blew up because and then you see oxygen coming out.
Yeah.
That actually is left out of the movie, but in the book, it's explained what that scene was kind of about. When they had their second dream there and they saw the circuit board again, they were able to fill in the gap that Ben wasn't able to get the first time. And that enabled them to complete the actual diagram, and it solved their oxygen problem. That's what the completed diagram did. It actually creates oxygen, so they wouldn't have to go with oxygen the next time.
Okay.
Yeah. When they breathed out, something produced oxygen for them. So that explosion was actually them completing the diagram, and then oxygen suddenly coming out, and they're like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "It's oxygen. It's like it's producing oxygen now." That must have been the missing piece.
Okay.
So that explains that scene. And here it's just thought to be their oxygen tank just going off, which is actually what it is in the movie, but in the book it's actually explained a little bit differently.
All of which would have been really cool to see on screen.
Yeah. And
but I mean, you don't lose anything by now. There's a space camp flyer on this table. You see that?
Yeah. See, that's the brochure that he would have given his dad.
Mm-hmm.
But this scene here is, I think, this is the only scene with the mom.
This is the second one, I think.
Yeah, you don't see his dad, I don't think, and it's the only reference to him actually wanting to be an astronaut.
Right.
But he does mention here, like, "Oh, this is my will," like he's writing on a little piece of paper.
Right.
That's in the book too, and because he's not sure whether or not he's going to come back, so he decides to do that. But this happens pretty much as is in the movie as in the book, where the Dick Miller character finds his jacket, tracks him down, and it confronts him outside of his house.
Right.
Pretty much the same way, and Ben runs off, and they take off in haste because Dick Miller is after them.
Right.
Yeah, a little creepy though. You would be.
Yeah. It's it kind of rides the fence there. I mean, if it wasn't for those little bits of information we get about him before, that scene would have been menacing.
Yeah, I know, but looking at it from Ben's perspective.
From Ben's perspective, he's like, "Oh my God, who is this freak?" Yeah.
Yeah, Darren says right there, "Oh, we'll just kick his butt." Darren says that a couple more times in the movie, but actually it's said a lot more in the book. That's kind of like Darren's resolution for everything. He's like, if anybody gives us problems, let's just kick their butt. He says that a lot.
All right. Well, they've sure got that thing decked out.
Because do they put on their oxygen masks here? I don't think they do.
I don't know. I guess we'll wait and see here in a second. I don't think they do because
because it's not explained, I don't think. But in the book, it makes sense to why they wouldn't need them anymore. But I don't.
No, I get it. Yeah.
We'll see here in a couple of minutes, but I don't think they put them back on. So
I don't think they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this. He doesn't say this in the book that I remember.
I would love to have a model
of that. Oh, that would be so awesome.
Oh, I know.
Where he says, "Way to go, kid."
Yeah.
This kind of nice shot here, looking down on him with the light. This. Yeah,
it's very, very dreamy.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice send off for his character. I wish there was a little bit more in the movie, but this is what we get.
I agree. Yep, no masks. You're right.
Yeah,
never noticed. If you hadn't pointed it out, I mean, how many times have I watched this and I never got it?
Yeah, I never
thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it probably was intended to be explained in the movie. They just, Dante wasn't able to get around to explaining why.
Yeah.
But they,
maybe the scene was shot and just for time they cut it because, at this point the audience is in the movie and, let's just move on.
Yeah, the audience would have maybe assumed that maybe they're this, piping oxygen in, they just don't need masks anymore. But it is explained why they don't need that anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah. Didn't he say like Amazon women and want to breed a new race, something like that?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, Ben actually made a big deal about wanting to go to the moon the first time on their first trip. He was like, "Oh, let's just go right to the moon," and he's all gung ho about it, and so I think Darren is actually open for it, but Wolfgang's the one who says no. We're not going to go there yet.
Yeah.
And there is. Oh,
and here we are with very little to do
in the third act. We're about an hour in, but there is another little bit of information that I wish Joe Dante would have gone into a little bit more in that interview, where he mentioned that the original story, and I'm guessing this is the very first screenplay of this movie, where they said they had no third act because the third act they actually go to a planet, not a spaceship, to a planet where they meet aliens and play baseball and go home. And that's all that happens. So this must have been like a second draft where it was in part Joe Dante's input, where they would go meet aliens on a ship and these aliens would be referencing pop culture. And they thought that would be a really good idea. And in concept, that does kind of sound interesting, to where, they go to meet these aliens and they've been receiving our TV signals. So that's what they know of us. And that's how they think to communicate. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. Maybe that could work. And I guess maybe in the actual displaying of that, maybe in the actual way they decided to do it, it didn't really work out so much. But from here on out, the novelization is pretty close to what the movie is.
Right.
Their pop culture references aren't exactly the same. There's a bit more of it, and it's a little bit different in parts, but it's pretty much the same. This scene is pretty much the same. They come in through what's described as like a garbage disposal looking thing into the ship, and then they're this wafting of energy goes over the Thunder Road, and it's decontaminating them. It's pretty much the same.
Hmm.
Okay, now we're at the third act, so we can talk.
Yes,
we can
yes,
talk about it now. What a lot of people like to talk about how great this movie is until they get to the spaceship.
Right.
And I don't like to be dismissive of this movie simply because of this third act. I don't think it's a bad third act. I love this movie, and I will agree. It feels kind of like a letdown because the first two parts are so great that you get there and this is all that happens. But I won't throw the movie away because of it. And it doesn't completely taint my enjoyment of it. But what do you think of this part here?
Well, I mean, I'm right there with you, and with the bulk of the people that have the comment about that, it's a weak ending. I hate to say it, it's a weak ending. And I wouldn't dismiss the movie even if they didn't do this, but I think one of the things that helps to save the end of this movie is the fact that the Ben character, pays lip service to the fact that, when they're here, it's not everything he expected it to be. And even as he's sitting there watching, the alien, what's his name? The alien? Whack. Even as he's sitting there watching Whack, do his imitations and everything, you see the look on Ben's face, and he's just thinking, what? That this is not what I, hoped and dreamed and everything. And, to me, that's the part or the elements of the end that make it passable. But, even up to this point, just kind of the weirdness of the ship, it's okay. But when they get to the aliens, yeah, I hate to say it, but it just falls apart. I like the idea that it was kids. I think, alien kids. I think that was kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree with you completely. Like, in concept, them finding another set of kids, like, wow, that's a really great idea,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, they're curious about what's out there just as they are. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, they just had the technological means to make it happen.
I'm like,
yeah,
wow, that's
absolutely.
really neat. I mean, and there's a lot of neat things in this
movie. Yeah, I
mean,
ultimately, this is just a bunch of two alien kids, brother and sister, stole dad's car.
Yeah,
made a phone call.
I know. I think that's awesome, and I think if people are just maybe a little too dismissive. And I mean, think about the plot device of them creating this field of energy that allows them to put their spaceship inside of.
Yeah.
That's an awesome idea. I mean,
it is.
And who would have thought of that? These aliens send them this ability to create this field of energy, and that enables them to create a spaceship out of parts from a junkyard. I mean, that's just a beautiful idea.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's just overlooked because people like to talk about how disappointing this third act is.
Yeah. Well, what do you think as far as do you think the acknowledgement by the Ben character that this isn't what he thought it would be, and even when watching the Whack alien, and seeing his disappointment, do you find that to be something of a save in regards to the disappointing elements of this end?
Sure, I suppose. I mean, I never really thought about it much until I got older. As a kid, I just accepted all of this movie. I never.
Even as a kid, though, I can tell you when they got on the ship, my interest started to wane.
It did feel a bit different even then, but I still enjoyed this part of the movie. Like I'm talking about when I was very young. Like I thought that the Neek character and the Whack character doing their pop culture references, I thought were funny when he starts singing All Around the World. And
I mean, it's kind of cute. I mean, even today, I mean,
it was
not unenjoyable to watch.
I mean, he's gonna walk up to Whack, and Whack is gonna go, "What's up, Doc?" I thought it was funny. He's referencing Bugs Bunny, and it was funny stuff. But as I got older and looked back, and I would want that sense of boyhood wonderment, and this scene doesn't provide that.
No.
And that's when I started to feel disappointed. Not back then, but when I got older. But overall, I still feel that it works. The movie doesn't completely fall apart.
No, and I think I used that phrase, it falls apart. It doesn't fall apart. It just, just doesn't hit the mark that I would have hoped. To have an ending that would have really been satisfying, I think it would have had to have been a little longer. And, if we were going to stick with the idea of it being alien kids, which I really liked, I would have rather have seen them finding things in common and finding similar things, cultural type things, and go, oh, that's your version of sports. So this is you collecting baseball cards, or just something to relate to realize that even in a galaxy far, far away, kids are kids, and they're into things and they collect things and they're curious. It just would have been a little more fun. They could still have gotten interrupted by the dad who came to get his car. That would have been fine. I wish they would have also, if they had gone that route, downplayed the comedic nature kind of the dad and the aliens in general, because everything else up to this point has been taken relatively seriously. Mm-hmm. So, it almost turns cartoony, especially with the dad coming in, blah, 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 all that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's not put out that way in regard to the book, but it is kind of found out a little too easily, I always thought, where Darren kind of just assumes automatically that it's their father.
Yeah.
And there is a little bit, like I said, this is pretty much verbatim from the original screenplay. There's not too many differences. Like with Darren walking into this room here, is pretty much the same. But there is a bit in reference to like the scale of things. Like they talk about how like big this chair is. Like obviously somebody who's like 20 feet tall would sit in this chair. And obviously you see that the father is very large. So it explains a bit of that in terms of the scale of things. But
what's going on here?
He's being memory scanned. It's accessing his dreams or his memories. It's like a memory reader. This is one of those devices that they used to access Ben's dreams.
Because that was certainly not explained.
Not really. In the book, it is a little bit more. But here they did.
I would imagine so.
Here they're talking about, Darren is explaining it, but then Ben is like, oh, like the brain booster machine from Forbidden Planet or something like that. But
odd that it would be Darren that gets probed.
Yeah, well, it was in the book as well. But there is a little bit more in in the book. With Wolfgang. Wolfgang, they showed, is just met Neek, which is the sister, and they don't show her at first, but there's a little bit more dialogue between the two of them. And in the movie here, it's Whack who is doing. We just introduced to Whack here, is doing the all the references to pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
When Wolfgang meets Neek, she is doing it as well. She's, talking in commercial jingles and catchphrases and stuff like that. And that's how we're introduced to her character. But here in the movie, it's just Whack doing that.
Right.
So there is a little bit more. And I don't know if I really ever liked this design, this kind of funhouse looking design of this alien ship.
I don't mind the size of it. I've never been a particular fan, just in any movie, of this utterly grungy look of things.
Yeah, that's what I meant. This kind of grungy look. I didn't really like it that much. Like you mentioned, once we were talking about this older film called Millennium, and maybe we'll do a commentary for that one day. But one of the things that really put you off, that never really bothered me, was their depiction of the future and how grungy and disgusting looking it was. I think that's one word you used repeatedly, like disgusting.
It's not a place I would have wanted to live.
Yeah,
no.
it just really put you off, and it didn't really bother me, but this does in my mind. This kind of grungy, look. I never wanted like the advanced alien culture to have like this grungy spaceship, where it looks like.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying it needed to be.
It kind of
Star Trek hallways.
No, yeah, exactly. It kind of reminds me of that Mystery Science Theater episode Space Mutiny, where their spaceship has a huge basement. It's just kind of grungy and not futuristic looking at all. I'm not saying.
Well, it does kind of have a Futuro look to it, but I don't know. I mean, whatever. It's their choice. This part looks more spacey.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, this big dome here. It's nice.
Yeah. Do they ever explain what these floating bubbles are supposed to be?
Yeah, they do actually. Those are just supposed to be more spheres.
Oh,
geez,
I can't believe I never connected that.
Electromagnetic point of force. I think that's what Wolfgang calls it in the book and in the movie.
Okay.
She's playing with them or doing something with them in the book, and she talks about them in a little bit more detail.
Huh.
Yeah, she's coming on to him. That was kind of funny with their little suction cups.
I remember watching the last time I watched this, I paid attention to the credits, and a guy named Rob Bottin was listed as doing the.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's a makeup artist.
Okay.
He did the alien effects in this movie. He also did the effects in Legend.
Oh, there's a favorite of yours.
That's a favorite of mine, and
these creatures are sacred animals, something like that. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, if you were to watch Legend, if you remember, there's a character named Meg Mucklebones.
All right.
That shows up. It pops out of the water. Very similar in design and kind of feel as these aliens here, which oddly enough was also played by Robert Picardo.
Really?
In Legend, yes, he played the character of Meg Mucklebones. Completely covered in prosthetics. I mean, absolutely unidentifiable. But yeah, you can actually see a very similar. It's hard to explain. It's a similar style in the creation of these aliens. If you were to look back at the Meg Mucklebones character.
Well, that's not too surprising. I mean, like with composers, you'll recognize motifs and their sounds.
Sure.
So you can. It's reasonable to assume that you might find the same in creature effects.
I don't particularly care for how slimy Whack looks.
Yeah, he does. He does look a little too greased.
If they had cut it in half, it would have been okay.
Yeah, he is very greasy, and so is she.
I understand that they were trying that to make him look more real, but I think they went a little too far. Because it kind of makes him disgusting.
A little bit. Well, I guess, they really wanted to give the impression, to kids, these are really alien creatures and they look nothing like us. And slime is one of the dead giveaways, I suppose.
Certainly a fine idea that their
all
knowledge
their
comes from TV.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's just the delivery that missed.
Well, it does make sense in concept, because
in concept,
because these aliens are kids like them, that they would be watching the same kind of stuff, like
Well, they're watching everything, but they're imitating.
Yeah, but they're very eccentric about it and very excited about it because it's new and different.
Sure, sure.
They kind of
Yeah.
have this exuberance that kids would have that the adult alien form wouldn't have. So they're really into all these commercials and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And yeah, it's fun to them. So it sounds like a really great idea. It's just, I guess, in the way that they delivered it, it's just,
Yeah.
See, look at Ben's face. He's
I know. He's like, what?
yeah,
What's going on here?
he's trying to enjoy it, but he's just more confused than, I guess. I don't know if the director or the writer would have thought that maybe we would have felt just like him, and we're supposed to. He's the
I don't know.
He's the
I mean, he
protagonist.
certainly is representing what we, the audience, are feeling. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we shouldn't be in that state of mind right now.
No, that's the part that kind of takes you out of it. I mean, he is amusing. It's not that it's not amusing. It's just amusing is not what I wanted when I got to this point in the movie.
Well, yeah, and you want something more along the lines of, say, Contact. When Jodie.
Well, not even that deep. Just
I'm not saying it has to
something-
be that deep, but Jodie Foster, travels all that distance and finds the visage of her father.
Yeah.
And I would have much liked to have seen aliens in that movie, but I thought that was a really interesting way to do it, and to where it lets you down, but at the same time it does fulfill you.
Yeah.
But because you don't see the image of her father singing and dancing like Whack is,
Right.
or it's like, he doesn't imitate Hitler because in Contact the first message they got was Hitler, so he's not going Heil Hitler,
Right. Yeah.
He's they're portrayed as very intelligent, and this is obviously you're different from us, but we're not going to imitate you. We don't understand you, but we're curious.
I like his teeth.
Wax teeth.
Yeah, he's kind of like got this eternal smile. He's kind of like slightly retarded or something, but
Yeah.
hey, little buddy. Yeah, how you doing? He's got that way about him.
Yeah, back away, son. You're bothering me.
Look at his little ears flapping.
Yeah, over his eyes. I mean, they're both kind of interesting design.
Oh, yeah. I don't have a problem with the design.
I think it was the character of Jar Jar Binks, though, that kind of left me a little cold when it comes to eye stalks. Yeah, I just, because it just always reminds me of that now. Whenever I see something with eye stalks,
Right.
I just see Jar Jar, and I'm kind of like, ugh, for a minute.
Right.
See, all the characters are kind of like, except for Wolfgang, they're all kind of like bored. Like Darren.
Well,
and
Darren's kind of getting into it.
Darren's
He's
kind of
just-
getting into it, but like they're both kind of like, this is,
like, is this it?
yeah,
Yeah.
just like what's going on here? This is, I always I thought it was kind of interesting that back in the 80s, this is before Robert Picardo was the Doctor on Star Trek. Now when people mention his name, that's what they think of. They think of the Doctor.
Sure.
But not then. And usually in a movie, they put a wig on him. As far as I remember, when in Inner Space he had hair, and in Gremlins 2 he had hair, so they threw a wig on him.
Well, as the cowboy in Inner Space, he looked totally different.
Well, yeah, he came off as very suave and debonair, and I thought that was kind of a tribute to his acting ability, as opposed to he's kind of playing, when he's playing the role of the Doctor in Star Trek, he's kind of this kind of nerdy,
Bumbling.
dorky, kind of up on his high horse kind of character.
Right.
So here's Ben. He's still trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
It's like,
he's trying to make it, what we
fit into
wanted this experience to be.
Yeah, to fit into his reasoning. He's like, oh, you've been visiting us, and now you're checking up on us, and now you're going to give us all the answers, and
yeah.
And so this, you're just entertaining us right now. That's all.
Yeah. He keeps waiting for the big stuff to happen.
Germs. That's another thing that's it's also in the novelization that's here in the movie. Where Wolfgang is explaining here, they had to disinfect us just to get this close to us, and that explains the energy surge over the Thunder Road, and that's why they get out of their ship. And this year, which I like this touch here, that they're a bit nervous about visiting Earth because of the way movies portrays monsters and aliens here. I think we're going to see a clip of the day the Earth stood still.
Yeah, I think we see Klaatu get shot.
Yeah, which, any movie that references that classic piece of sci-fi. Of course, we've seen other examples of it, this Island Earth, and earlier Ben was watching War of the Worlds. So you can imagine that these kid aliens would be
a little scared.
Yeah. Wouldn't exactly know how humans would react to them, since they're being portrayed as, being, hunted and shot at, and like maybe we shouldn't go to Earth, but yeah. And actually, in the novel, it's explained a little bit differently when it comes to Ben's dreams. Ben and Wolfgang and Darren assumed that the aliens had kind of sent him the dream, more or less, or something like that. But it was actually Ben's dream. Like they were able to tune in to the dream and kind of put that little bit of element in there with the actual
Well, look at this little bit here. What he's talking about, how it took him 4 episodes to realize that the dog,
Oh yeah, it's like it took me 2 episodes to figure out why the little hairy kid never spoke. It's like his acting was good, but I don't think he deserved the whole series for that.
Yeah, I mean those are the kinds of things that I like being talked about and referenced in this ending.
Yeah,
if it was more of that kind of stuff, I would have felt a little more satisfied.
Yeah, see, that's a cultural kind of difference that you would
that's a cultural conceit on our part, that we know who and what those characters are in a show like Lassie, but an alien wouldn't have any idea what's going on in that.
Yeah, it's a lost in translation bit that you would expect there to be.
Right.
And it was a nice break right there in the scene when they did that, where he's speaking in actual honesty as opposed to, quoting TV shows or whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's back to it. Right now he's back to it again. He's talking in that kind of commercial way again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but see, they're leaving already. The trip is almost over, and we saw the space pirates, which is actually the father, coming up in the much larger ship. And in the book, it is pretty much the same. It's this is kind of explained as their car, and they stole the car. And they weren't supposed to do it, and now they're in trouble. And Darren assumes that it's their father.
Right. Yeah, it's just very disconcerting.
I was actually disappointed by the book in that respect, because when I was reading the book and I was getting up to this point when they were going to get into the third act, and in that interview that I mentioned with Joe Dante, where he's talking about how they went to this planet and played baseball, I thought that maybe that the ending of the book was going to be completely different. but it wasn't, and I was kind of disappointed when I got there because I was like, oh, is the ending going to be completely different? What's going to happen? Is the third act going to completely, um, make me feel differently about this story entirely? But it was pretty much the same, and kind of left me with the same kind of empty feeling that this movie might bring to an adult. Like, what was the whole point of that whole journey? What did they learn, or how did their characters grow and change, and how does that make me feel? And I was kind of hoping for a little bit more sense of fulfillment, and I wasn't provided that, really.
Right.
I was hoping it would, and it didn't. It still left me a little cold. Yeah, it's just a little goofy. Probably a little more goofy than it needed to be, I guess.
No, I agree.
He squeezes his big belly. Yeah, I mean, it's. I suppose they had two ways to go. They could make it either he's very scary, or they can make him very funny.
Well, I mean, it certainly fits in tone with the brother and sister aliens at this point.
Well, this is a kids movie, so they don't want to make it scary.
Well, yeah, I agree. I didn't, I don't need for him to be a scary character. Just, heck, we didn't need to see him at all. Somehow this information could have been conveyed in such a way to where we know the dad has come to get them, without having to even see this guy. I like the facial.
He's like, oh, he's really pissed. I like that kind of line. Again, it was just like the honesty out of his voice. It's like he barely right now. He's like, we were afraid you'd be, disappointed when you met us, and it's that kind of honesty in his voice that you wanted to hear more of.
Yeah.
That you just didn't
at
get.
This point, as far as the interaction, between the kids and the aliens, it's about 10% of that, real genuine honesty and 90% of that crazy shit. If it had been the other way around, where they just started off all crazy, but then, tamed themselves a little quicker, it would have been a much better ending, a little more satisfying.
I like that little bit that just passed where you see Whack and Neek arguing about, oh, we shouldn't have stolen the car, and they go back and forth, and then they revert to their natural language. They start going, and I thought that was a kind of interesting, touch that they did that, right. In anger, they both went back to speaking in their alien tongue. I kind of like that. It's kind of interesting or amazing to me to look at River Phoenix and the way he looks now, and then like to realize that not too long after this, he's going to be playing a character almost 180 degrees from this character. He's going to be playing what's the character's name in Stand By Me?
Right. Yeah.
I forgot.
Chris?
Yeah, he's going to be playing Chris in Stand By Me, where he's nothing like this character. If anything, he's more like Darren's character in Proximation. I mean, not entirely, but, where he's, smoking cigarettes and cursing and, he's from the wrong side of the tracks. And here he's, nothing like that at all. Yeah, it gives her the harmonica. It's, I think
that was funny.
I think if I remember right, in the book she actually eats it. She swallows it. Yeah, I think she did eat it. She bit off a piece of it right there. But I think in the book she swallowed the whole thing. Did we miss the part where Darren gives him the Walkman? Did we talk over that?
Oh, we talked over it. Yeah, he already gave it to him.
Yeah, because if I remember right, doesn't Darren say it's 80s music? It's good.
Yeah.
And they're in the 80s. Doesn't he say that? He says it's 80s music.
Yeah, he does.
Which always kind of made me wonder why he said that in the 80s. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it would have made
I
more
don't know.
sense if he said, "Oh, it's Springsteen."
70s music or something.
That, or he said Springsteen because they named it after Bruce
Yeah.
Springsteen. So, oh, it's Springsteen. It's good. And like, oh, that
That
would have
is
made
odd
sense.
to refer to the decade you're in. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
get it.
just odd. Yeah. I think it would have been a nice touch if he just would have said, "Oh, it's Bruce Springsteen. It's good." That makes more sense because it would have been on his mind. He just
See, here we go again, where Ben is lamenting this,
the trip is over, the journey's over, and
and it wasn't what he wanted it to be,
no.
He's really trying to think fondly, but it's just not happening.
Well, it's like your whole life wanting to go to Disneyland and hearing about it and how great it is, and you get there and it's raining and all the rides are shut down.
Yeah.
It's would be incredibly disappointing, and even if you go to Disneyland and it's not raining, it's never going to live up to your expectations, your dreams. It's never going to be like that. And we're coming up to the ending here. It's the ending is a little bit different than it in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They do crash in the lake, as in the movie though, but it's actually explained a little bit better as to why. It's actually because the power had actually run out, like in the car battery. I think that's as to why they suddenly the field turns off. I don't think they mention why here. It just, this field suddenly just turns off for no reason, or just to assume that they just lost power. But it's actually because they've used up all the power in journeying to the spaceship and back. They've
Mm-hmm.
used up all the power in the car battery. That's why it shuts off before they get home.
Okay.
It shuts off prematurely. And as in here in the movie, Lori, the character of Lori, isn't affected by the dream here. It showed her having those kind of flash of clouds in her mind, and showing that she's kind of maybe being sent transmissions as they were. Not so much in the book. Actually, she just kind of sees the Thunder Road falling to Earth, and she goes to investigate. She does witness this happening. But like I said, her character is actually a little bit different, and not, like I said, likable really, because she's very dismissive of Ben.
Right.
She's not like really interested in him at all, and he's very infatuated with her, especially when he gives her that Mars rock on a ring, and it's very nerdy and boyish of him. But I kind of wondered if her character was going to come back, because it didn't seem necessary at all. It just kind of seemed like it was going to be a piece of character growth for Ben as he experiences the pain of being rejected. I thought that was kind of all it was going to be. But she does come back in the
The
original
thing
story.
is that actually has a thematic tie to what happens with the aliens. He has a certain expectation of how that's going to play out, and of course it doesn't work out that way. And
Sure.
The situation with the girl, according to the book, what you're saying is pretty much the same thing. He has an idealized vision of how that will play out with her, and it's just not that way.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Well,
kind of like you're saying, it would have provided a certain step into adulthood, let's say, of just things don't quite work out the way you hope they do.
No, this here, this is kind of like the only scene we get of the three of them together after their trip.
Uh-huh.
And you see Darren there in the distance. He's sitting up in the tree with the raincoat on. In the book, he's actually reading War of the Worlds. That's what he's reading right now.
Oh, I see.
You see something in his hands. See, like, you see his character has grown a little bit. That's not really explained right here. But you see that his character has changed, and he's been affected by Wolfgang and Ben.
I never noticed that before.
But that's what he's actually doing. So he's been changed a little bit. But the three of them, it's actually their time afterwards is actually detail a little bit more. Like they'd become like the new clique around, not really clique, but the new group around school. Like they become like a really tight knit group of friends, and they were well known around school for that. And kind of like almost the Untouchables, they were kind of like that. It was like Elliot Ness, Sean Connery, and
Stone.
Yeah, Stone, and I forgot the other character's name.
Wallace.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. They were just kind of this very tight knit group, and that was a kind of nice touch. I like that they were really affected by this this experience they had together, and it bonded them. And that's not really touched upon right here.
No.
It all just kind of seems, it's all kind of melancholy right now until you get this little note from Laurie, have a nice trip,
Yeah.
And this is actually a little different. He's actually supposed to be dreaming right here. Like he's going to turn around and see the Thunder Road in the classroom. I think that's right here. Yeah. He's nuts. Well, in the original story, he's at home and he goes downstairs to his living room, and he does so because, like I said, Dick Miller's character is supposed to come back. Dick Miller is actually on his TV screen in his bedroom. Like he's watching this old alien movie, this old sci-fi movie in his dream, and all of a sudden the character of Dick Miller, Charlie, comes on screen. And he says, "Ben, wake up!" And Ben comes to the screen and he says, "Go look in your living room." And so he goes to his living room, and then he sees the Thunder Road. And inside the Thunder Road, when he opens it, Wolfgang and Darren are sitting in the Thunder Road. And he said, "Oh," and they said they're sending again. The aliens are sending transmissions. We're dreaming. We're all sharing a dream again. So I thought that was kind of nice. The fact that Ben had incorporated the character of Dick Miller into his dreams. I thought that was an interesting touch. And here it's just kind of, Laurie's just kind of brought into the story, and she's kind of always just been waiting for Ben here, like with the hand holding. She's just kind of been waiting for Ben to make a move on her, and here he finally does. But in the book, like I said, he had already done that, and she rejected it. But here, in the original story, she does come back. She joins them in the dream, and she's wearing the ring that he had given her with the Mars rock on it for no apparent reason, really, because it seemed like she didn't really have a whole lot of interest in him. Like she liked him all right as a friend,
right?
But she just kind of comes back into the story, and it didn't really seem to make any sense why she would be included in the dreaming.
No, even as you describe it, it doesn't make any sense.
It didn't seem to. Like, it seemed unnecessary. Like, why include her character when it like, other than to make you feel warm inside, but it didn't seem to make sense. And there, nice. And there we go.
And there's the board that's holding him up. You can clearly see under his shirt.
It's very visible. But this stuff is pretty cool looking.
It's great. I mean, what a great send off to the movie,
Yeah.
Very Peter Pan.
Yeah. I mean, this is a nice touch, them all flying together over the circuit board, and they mentioned...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's a line of dialogue which sounds like, dubbing, like ADR, where they say, "Oh, this looks like a real complicated one." So they have they're going to have to build something, a new thing, Yeah, and then we go back to Whack and Neek here. I don't know. Would you have thought it'd been better to go off with them on the clouds, or?
Oh yeah. Well, we didn't need to go back here.
Yeah, I didn't think it was necessary.
No, it should have just faded.
And the movie ends with the music that I felt is wrong. The music is like the third act music. It's down, 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 down.
Yeah,
and
there it is, Misak Taylor.
It's not that dum 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 dum. It should have that feeling. It should end with that feeling. And it doesn't. It ends with that goofy Whack feeling that the Whack character brought to the story. And it just not the right feeling to go out on. It should have gone out on the music with the clouds. That was, the Explorer's theme. I think it. I
agree.
I think it kind of tainted the ending. But here we go. We made it all the way through the movie.
Yeah, well, I was very surprised with the wealth of information the novel gave you. Very, very surprised.
Yeah, my apologies for talking too much if I did.
No, no, I was,
Well, I'm
I
I'm
was,
I'm
I was interested. I was
I'm
very much
glad
enjoying the information you gave.
I'm glad that you found interest in it. I hope that others will too, and will pick up the book and give it a read. And like I said, it's a good read. And also check out that clip on YouTube with Joe Dante with that interview. Um, any closing thoughts about about Explorers, Justin?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think we've, or at least I've kind of expressed myself. I mean, the first 2/3 of the movie are great, classic. The final third falls apart, unfortunately. It does have some redeeming elements to it, to the ending, that is. But for me, the movie ends with them in the clouds, even though it goes back to the ship. The ending is them flying in the dream, and in general, I do wish that the Dick Miller character had been expanded upon on screen, and even the character of the girl. I wish she had either been cut out entirely or had been given a little more, because
Yeah,
she's
because in the movie, I don't think she actually says anything, does she? Maybe
I
like
don't
a couple of things.
maybe a line, but like at her window, I
Yeah,
think she
at her
talks,
window, she's
but
like, she says, "Ben, is that you?" And
yeah,
she says a few other things, but that's it.
yeah, for her to, and it sounds like the book is no different. For her to come into the dream at the end is kind of a big deal, and
Well, the way I thought of
they should have done something.
the way in the movie, the way it's portrayed is she's being included as one of the dreamers, but in the book, I got the feeling that Ben was projecting her into the dream for his own sake. That's kind of the impression I got. But seeing the movie,
you get the impression that she's
she's being included into it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You do get that impression.
Um,
Because also, even though they don't explain it at all in the movie, when they're coming in the Thunder Road, when they're crashing, she seems to be sensing something. She seems to be somehow getting connected to them in some way. So yeah, it seems like in the dream she is, an active participant rather than a projection.
Well, as we roll up on the credits here, I'll just say that I hold this movie very closely to me. I hold it dearly. I think it's a great movie. Reminds me of movies like Fly the Navigator, and I'm glad it was made, and glad it's out there. And I hope people will not dismiss it just because it has a third act that didn't live up. But great movie, and it still holds up today. I think a lot of good stuff.
I agree.
So I think with that note, I'll sign off. This is Josh. This has been
I'm Justin.
This has been the Soulless Minions of Orthodoxy, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.